to finish up in the top 5. I mean, the car looked good early on. Not sure what happened there in the feature, but he finished in the 13th spot. Just ahead of him, the 60J Jordan Henry. Another guy I thought we'd see race for the win. He was fast all day long. This Sport Mod division, top to bottom, was so competitive. You know, the guys that you really thought were going to see racing up at the front kind of got stuck in the middle. And when you can't get by anybody because the track is so hooked up, that makes it hard to win. And when you got a stacked field like this, that goes against it. Yeah, the 29P, Braxton Possinger. We saw how fast. I had never seen this driver. Impressed. Fast. The car was hooked up. I mean, smooth, consistent. This guy here, I'm going to watch his name throughout the season because he's one of the guys that caught my, along with Jordan Henry, I mean, which we were impressed with him as well. Just ahead of him, Mike Wilcox, the 98W, the silver car with the 98, like the checkered flag.
Oh, yeah.
Good-looking car, very fast in the early part of the program. He finished in the 10th position. Just ahead of him, a guy we saw in the first practice, a guy that I thought was going to be a real threat from what we saw early in the program, 99C, Doug Kaufman. Mm-hmm. A little bit of bad luck. He did finish on the lead lap. In fact, he was the last car on the lead lap in the 9th spot. Ahead of him, Steve Hopkins in the black and yellow 24. Very fast. But again, in that group of cars that just didn't have a chance to do anything because they were so tight and so packed up. 31, Lauren Cruz's old car, Brandon Fox, finished in the 7th position. Now, I pronounced his name wrong for the first for the heat race, and I heard about it. And Brandon, if you're listening, I apologize, sir. My fault. I'll own it. 6th spot, the 26, Art Hyatt, a guy that I thought we were going to see seriously race for the win. What we saw in the dash, what we saw in the heat race, truly fast and a talent behind the wheel. It's not the first time we've seen Art. Remember that name, Art Hyatt in the sport mods. Dwayne Melvin, a late arrival. He rolled onto the track, and we're like, where'd that car come from?
He wasn't even in our sheets.
He wasn't in our sheets. He wasn't in the pit crews. We got a note, 69. Oh, here's what the note said. 69, Dwayne Melvin. What class?
It was on a Post-it.
Yeah, it was a Post-it and was like hurried up to the Moxie Tower, and he rolled out, and where'd that car come from? You know, we had, but he was fast. He got a top 5 finish in that 69 car. I mean, he was wheeling. He was driving. We saw, and that's one of those guys that just wasn't afraid to hit it hard and hit those ruts, and he was on the throttle. Fun to watch. Just ahead of him in the 4th spot, Jason Nelson, the 51N. Beautiful race car. Very, very good talent behind the wheel. And this is a guy that I think you're going to see, we're going to talk a lot about this year. With the equipment that he's in and the talent underneath him, we're definitely going to be talking about him, whether it's at whatever track he unloads.
Yeah.
That's a name you're going to hear as well. These top 5 drivers are all just impressive. The 15 JT, now these top 3 cars, when they got in the battle for the lead, this feature here, top to bottom, arguably was the race of the night, competition-wise. You know, you guys,
the battle, yeah.
Yes, the battle, the heated racing, the side-by-side, the fantastic race to watch from a race fan's point of view. Top 3, Justin McCready in the 15 JT. The battle that he had with the 2 cars ahead of him, for a while there, you didn't know who was going to win.
Nope.
I mean, lap after lap. Then things kind of settled down, and our leader eventually started separating himself and became the class of the field. But just ahead of him, who finished second, led, I think, about half of this race. Right around the halfway mark is when he gave up the top spot. Actually didn't give it up. It was taken. I mean, it was taken from him. But Mike Medell in the 30M made his way up from Medford. We were talking about him.
Yeah.
That is you talk about one of the nicest sport mods you'll ever see. That's one of the ones you're going to talk about. And Mike Medell.
Yeah, an impressive performance. It's really neat.
No doubt. But yeah, we talked to them. This guy, he was at the race car show 2 years ago. This car, we talked to him a little bit last week in the pit area. If you don't know Mike Medell, this guy is he is a bulldog, and I'll tell you right now, you get this guy mad, and you're going to find that out. This is, I mean, a super nice guy, but he's one of those guys that He's not real tall, but he is just as wide as he is tall, and he's solid. That dude right there is if he got a hold of you, you're in trouble. And he got a hold of that race car and manhandled that thing through the ruts. I mean, and he did. He stayed that thing on the lower half of the racetrack, the bottom to mid groove, and just manhandled that thing through the ruts. And I think that was eventually what cost him the race, was catching those ruts to allow eventual winner Jordan Broughton to get by. And when Broughton got by, we talked about him early in the program about not just him as a driver, we talked about his race car. And what did we say about his race car, Dom? We talked about his race car, and we talked about how of all the cars at that racetrack, and this is before we started looking at numbers and really getting into the heart of what we're talking about. Saturday, watching his car, there was not a race car there dialed like the 84.
It was almost like it was built for that track, for that race, for that moment. It was just spot on.
If you've ever seen a perfect race car, I would say we saw it Saturday night in that 84 of Jordan Broughton. That car, out of turn 2, that car would just, the power go on the ground, the car would come up, just fly down the backstretch, and what you're expecting to happen doesn't, because that car goes into turn 3, gently sets back down, gets pitched, gets back on the throttle, gets rotated, and would just fly through the turns. Nothing aggressive about that car. That car was not violent. When you see a car that hooked up and they come down the backstretch and they lift to get into the throttle, to get that car set, they lift, that car slams down.
Yep.
Jordan Broughton's car would come in and it would just float, just easily set down, perfect. Car would rotate, and it was just that fast. And then the car rotating back on the throttle, and he was on the throttle. I'm talking way before the apex.
I just recollect how many times I kept saying, look at that thing pull.
Out of the corners. That car, and I'm not kidding you when I say this, and then we're talking about the IMCA Sport Mods. This is going to lead into our discussion. Yeah. That car was the fastest car at the entire track Saturday. Okay. The fastest, not in his division, the fastest car there, when you look at lap times in qualifying. He was faster than every single IMCA modified there with a sport mod. Now, I know that doesn't mean a lot to people. They're going to say track conditions. Track conditions were pretty equal for everybody. True. Especially in the early program. They truly were. They were pretty equal for everybody in qualifying. The setup underneath that race car, and I don't think I've ever seen a race car so perfect for one racetrack ever. It was, you talk about nailing a setup. Mm-hmm. That Razor chassis was, I'm going to say, perfect.
It was very impressive.
You take a race car that good, and you put a driver like Jordan, a phenomenal talent. We know Jordan Broughton. We've talked a lot about him on Northwest Dirt News, and man, the finesse to get that car to do it. Just absolutely perfect. I talked to them earlier in the day, and I said, hey, any thoughts of moving up? As dominant as you've been, as good as you've been in these IMCA sport mods, any thoughts of moving up? He kind of looked at me and smiled and said, we've thought about it. But then I started thinking, why would you? Why would you? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Yeah. We've got 45 minutes to talk about this. And this discussion started in the tower during the race. Yeah, Saturday during the race. IMCA Sport Mods versus the IMCA, what we call A Mods. Watching what this field of cars did, watching what the IMCA Modifieds did, the question came up: why would a driver? And this is gonna be a very opinionated.
Oh yeah.
And that's okay. That's what we want to do. Yep. This is a discussion. I want opinions. I want thoughts. Why would a driver build an IMCA A mod when you can be every bit as fast in an IMCA Sport mod?
Have to have a quick change, rather than the 9-inch or the shocks, the everything, all the money, the money part of a IMCA modified versus a 9-inch floater. Steel body shocks
in a limited, what we would call a limited car. If it was a late model, it would be a limited late model.
Yeah, car, everything. there's so much to discuss in this that it's really hard to even know where to start.
It is, because here's the thing. This is the racetrack that we talk about that we get 3 or 4 times a year, where it's a horsepower racetrack. Tacky, where you can use all the horsepower. Okay, that and there it is right there. Gray Ferrando, the snake, just chimes in. I knew that was no, and this is why I knew this was going to be the first thing that an IMCA modified driver would say. He was to say, we're going to build the A-mod, and I'm not saying he as a Gray.
Don't say A-mod. There's IMCA modified and sport.
But that's
mods.
why I said we call it.
Okay. I got that right.
So with the IMCA mod, and I knew this was going to be the very first argument that we were going to get, and it's legit, and I understand it. Gray says the payout is far more. Okay, is it?
But the investment is less.
That's right. You're going to invest more, but to race more. So is the payout really more? I knew that was going to come up. I get that you're racing for more money. But are you really winning more money? Do you see? That's the argument.
Here's where I'm going to start with this. You have to qualify yourself. Are you going to take this semi-professionally, or are you a hobbyist?
Sure. Okay.
Do you have a family?
That's valid.
Do you have a family that says, "Hey, I want to go race once in a while, and I like modifieds."
Right.
Okay. Sport mod definitely seems like the ticket. Regular IMCA modified, that's expensive. It costs a lot to run.
It is.
Tires, the good shocks. You break a shock, you break a whatever. It's expensive to replace.
You're right.
So you have to qualify yourself. Where are you, and what are you going to do?
What's your objective? Okay.
See, Gray's going to be your...
Now this is where I'm going to argue, and I'm not going to say argue as in I'm going to argue. This is the discussion I'm going to have. Gray says, and you are racing against a higher level of competition. I'm going to strongly disagree with that.
I agree with you. And
I'm not.
I think. Okay, hold on.
This is opinions. This is opinions.
I'm not sticking my opinion out there. IMCA modifieds have more races for more payouts. More guys are going to race. You are gonna hit some competition level if they've been in the seat more. Sport mods don't have that many races, at least here in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
At least here in the Pacific Northwest, there's not as many tracks doing it.
Okay. So, and now here's and this is good. This just as you're saying that, Brad Newsom from the Cullen Weinbarger Stables chimes in. He says caliber of shows you can run. I'll agree. That's a valid point. You do get a higher caliber of shows with the IMCA modifieds. That's a fact. I'll agree to that.
But you can still run a sport mod in a mod class, can't you?
I Okay, now listen. No. But that's.
I'm just saying. Hold on now.
I'm watching this weird trucking
chat. Yeah,
but
you got guys chiming in like literally. This is probably the most active I've ever seen.
Okay,
it.
so my point is, if you can run a sport mod in a modified class, and you're running comparatively, close
times are comparative. Yep.
My hands are in the air.
I'm with you. I'm with you on this. And this is good discussion. So Brad Newsom says, name 5 national B-mod drivers. Okay.
And Gray says, no, you can't run a sport mod.
I wasn't sure about that one.
Okay. I wasn't going to say yes or no because I don't know. I'm not going to say something I don't know. But now, Brad, okay, I'll give you that. Name 5 national B-mod drivers. Okay, I can't. I don't know anybody that can. But that doesn't mean these guys aren't any less talented than the guys just because they have an IMCA modified. Ferrando says Bobby Hogue, Sawyer, Pounds, Thornton Jr., Taylor. The name goes on. You're right. Okay, those are the names we know. Those are the names that are nationally recognized as great drivers.
Yeah, IMCA mods, not sport mods.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Those are the nationally recognized names as great drivers. That doesn't mean the talent below you in these IMCA sport mods is any less. You see what I'm saying? You can argue that all day long. That's like saying, well, somebody in a super sport isn't as talented as somebody in a late model. And I understand the big names are in the IMCA modifieds. That's an elite division that gets a lot of national recognition that we love to watch and we recognize. Okay, I'll give you that. That is absolute true. But those guys all came from lesser divisions at one point. These guys coming up through the IMCA sport mods, if you took some of these guys and put them in that equipment, I'll bet you they can be that good.
I'm not going to argue. There are drivers out there that literally, we talked about it earlier. Kevin Roberts was in a late